Hi, everybody. Well, welcome. And guys, you're in here for a treat. All of you that are in the leadership program, we have got an old and just loved friend of mine, Howard Halderman. We've known each other for a long time. And this is a guy who you're going to hear his story and you're going to learn a lot of lessons about Howard. But this is a guy who's taken a family-owned business, several generations, with a very long legacy and improved on that. You know, if you know anything about family-owned business, they don't last very long, statistically speaking, and you get problems with things staying focused. Howard, as you'll find out, is highly visionary, highly culture-based. He keeps things online, and he has built onto an already successful thing, and the results are amazing. He's got lots of stuff he wants to tell you. Howard was in my Townsend leadership program in Indianapolis, and he worked very hard on being a leader of character, and as well as a great dad, great husband, as well as being just a healthy person. And we just caught up. I haven't seen him forever, and just welcome Howard Halderman.
Great to be here, John. Appreciate the opportunity. When John originally proposed this idea to me, I think the class was still back at Huntington University. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, I'd be able to drive. It's 16 miles away, show up, do it live. And I do a lot of presentations every year. Sometimes it's leading off an auction. Sometimes it's talking about such hot topics like farmland values and cash rents. But they're all live events. And so then he says, well, I'm taking it out to California. And I thought, well, I'm probably not going to California for the presentation. So he said, well, no, we'll do it by Skype. So this is a unique experience for me. I ask for your patience and grace in this because hopefully it'll go well.
Oh, I'm sure it will. And I've seen you speak before. And by the way, this is the Huntington campus, except that I'm in California with these students who are still in Huntington. So you could be there, but perfect. I wouldn't be there. And so it was a big mess. So I thought, okay, you're there, I'm here. We'll talk to the Huntington students. We'll have a great time.
Perfect.
All right, Howard, I've seen your material, and guys, I want you to pay attention to this. We're talking 1897. We're not talking, millennial startup here. This is a guy that's got some legacy. So, Howard, tell us your story.
So the Halderman companies are based in Wabash, Indiana. It's a little town, 10,000 people. We're about 70 miles north of Indianapolis, halfway between Indianapolis and South Bend. My grandfather started our business all the way back in 1930. So we've got an 87-year historical business, third generation ownership today. Mm. And we provide many of the same services that my grandfather started out providing so many years ago. We service farmland owners. We don't really delve into commercial space or residential leasing, industrial. It's all focused on farmland. And we manage farms throughout the U.S. So today we're managing, John, somewhere 650 farms, 250,000 acres in 19 states. And we go from North Carolina and Georgia on the east all the way out to Idaho in the west.
Now when you say manage, tell our students what manage means in your industry, Howard.
So management means we're representing someone who owns the farm but does not farm the farm themselves. Mm-hmm. So they need somebody to be their fiduciary, and they hire us to be that person. And we basically find a farm operator who's going to drive the tractor, drive the combine, and then we negotiate a lease with that person and basically oversee the whole operation from a landowner's perspective.
Okay, so one of my kids, and you know my kids, one of my kids is graduate from college, and he's in the commercial real estate space. So he's the guy that helps the person that owns the Applebee's to fill it up with tenants so that the tenants can make it run. So you go in and you help with the owner who doesn't want to do the farming to find the people that will actually operate the farm.
Exactly. And we do the same thing that your son's doing in the commercial space. Okay. We just do it for farmland. Mm-hmm. So in addition to the farm management services, we also do farm real estate brokerage, about $110 million annually. Mm-hmm. That'll be 100 plus farms that we'll sell, and that's largely in Indiana and the surrounding states. Our staff also does about 700 appraisals a year. So if you think of a three-legged stool, historically speaking, when I came into the business in 1988, those are the three services we did. Mm-hmm. We managed farms, sold farms, and appraised farms. Mm-hmm. And so that we still offer all three of those services today, maybe a little differently than what we used to as we evolve with times. We've got 21 professionals that do this work. And these individuals all have college degrees. They also have other levels of licenses. So broker's licenses are one of the requirements. You have to have a broker's license, and it might be even multiple states. Some of them have certified general appraiser designations, which is a huge accomplishment in terms of academic hours as well as experience. And then we have some that are accredited farm managers and accredited rural appraisers. Again, a lot of education goes into that. So a very educated staff. None of them work in our Wabash office. So we're very decentralized. They work out of their homes, basically.
It's kind of a flat organization, right? You don't have a lot of managers and managers of managers. It's fairly flat, right?
Exactly, John. And so you probably would say, Howard, you shouldn't have 21 direct reports. That's kind of what I have, though. So the way it works, though, is that they're very independent.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of how my grandfather started the business way back in 1930, is that we need independent thinkers, decision makers that we put out in the field. And you have to find the right people to accomplish that. So we've been very fortunate that we've found those folks. Mm-hmm. So in addition to the 21 professionals, we have 10 administrative support staff here in our Wabash office. We're kind of the service hub. We provide marketing services. We provide financial record keeping, IT, those kind of things to keep the backbone of the company going. Back in 2010, we had an opportunity that was an offshoot of my brother Richard's business to get into the institutional asset management space for farmland. So we formed a joint venture just a year ago with another group here in Indianapolis, and we formed U.S. Agriculture. U.S. Agriculture has 3 clients today. But we have 220 million assets under management, basically just all farmland. Mm-hmm. And it ranges from blueberries to rice to cotton to soybeans and corn. Mm-hmm. That entity is based out of Indianapolis, and the clients they have are very institutional. So it's different than our traditional client. We're representing the Arkansas teachers, New Mexico teachers. This is public information. So if you're a teacher, retired or active in the state of Arkansas, part of your pension money is invested in farmland. And there are a lot of pension plans around the country that are making that same decision.
So you really help. Part of what you do then, Howard, is you've got to assess how do we bring an investment value to those teachers.
Exactly. They have an expectation. They have to hit a certain return that their actuaries have told them they have to hit, not only to pay out current retiree payments, but also grow the fund over time so that there's benefits for retirees in the future. So how do we do all that? Those are 4 different types of services, but we do it, and I'm going to really talk about 2 main characteristics that I think drive the Halderman companies, the decisions we make, the direction we head, and the growth that we've seen. And these 2 characteristics are passion and culture. And so when I go out to hire somebody, those are the 2 things I'm looking for. I've told my kids, I've told those that I've interviewed, and I would tell all the students online tonight, you need to always follow your passion in life. Now, you may not be able to do that right out of school. You know that entry-level job may not be exactly your passion. But I would counsel them that over time, you need to find where your passion is and chase it. Because you're going to be happier, and that's the key, I think, to having a great career.
You know, what's interesting about that for you, knowing you and knowing your family and, how cool you guys are, is you didn't go outside of the legacy to find passion, but you found it within an already existing structure, and you discovered you had a passion inside you within that, right?
I did. I came out of Purdue in 1988, and I interviewed with other companies. I had an offer to go to work at Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati, totally unrelated to agriculture. But growing up on a farm, growing up kind of in the business, my internships in the summer were working with my dad here in the office. He kept a position open, hoping one of the sons would come back, and so I took advantage of that opportunity. The unique thing that Dad allowed, and I think my grandfather before that, is they allow for, and this gets into the cultural piece, but innovation and creativity. And I think that's really important when you go back to a family business, is that the current generation in leadership in that business allows the next generation some degree of creativity and innovation and doing it on their own. Because if they are purely just hired hands doing what Dad says to do every 15 minutes of the day,
just turning the crank,
it's not going to be a long-term gig. And so I think it's real important. And my dad did this. He would allow us to come up with something creative, largely driven off client needs. And then if it failed, it failed. Hopefully it didn't.
So he didn't micromanage you. He just said, "Okay, I'm going to take a risk with you, and not a Las Vegas risk, but I'm going to take a risk on you, Howard." And you did things, and you learned from that.
Exactly. And I'll give a good concrete example. My brother Richard, back in 2001, said, we ought to really set up a farmland investment fund of some vehicle, some type. And we had a couple clients at the time saying, if you created that, we would be interested in investing in it. Was it a new idea? No. Their Hancock Ag had a fund, UBS had a fund. And so it wasn't what I would call brand new, but at the same time, it was new for Halderman. Mm-hmm. Now, actually, my dad tried the same thing back in 1981, and it failed. Timing was wrong. He started at the high of the market, and the market crashed 60% over the next 6 years. So bad timing with that. So it wasn't a new idea, but what Richard was able to do, it was his passion. He found that, and John, Richard, what he does today. That first fund, we started in 2001. By 2006, we had $150 million in assets under management. Yep. Commingled strategy, invested heavily in farmland, which kind of has led to what U.S. agriculture is for me today. That first fund led to a second fund, which is in excess of $2 billion, and invested into agribusinesses, not just farmland, but actual agribusinesses today. So that was a situation where we took a risk. We invested some capital, significant capital. Richard and I borrowed money against the company basically to kick that first fund off. And so we made a big commitment into that, but it was following a passion. And I think that when you find that kind of passion and you are willing to really put the focus behind it, it can be successful.
What is it about? I want to get to the other pieces, but I'm really kind of struck just because you're such a vulnerable guy. What is it about the farming world? I know you grew up in it, but what is it about that grabs you so much, Howard, that you've dedicated your life to making farming a great thing for the world?
It's the people. And what I'll give you an example. We sold a farm. This was probably 2004. And it was sold at public auction. Now, 1997, which is immaterial. But we sold this farm at public auction. And I remember taking the purchase agreements to the wife of the couple that owned this property. And she, with tears in her eyes, hugged me for solving their financial problem at that time. And there have been hundreds of instances like that over the years where a family, one generation passes, 4 kids now own the farm, they're all over the country. What do we do with the farm? Well, Halderman can handle that for you. And our tagline is Halderman can help. Wow. And literally that's what we do. And every management situation, every real estate situation is different because the client has different needs. And so that's really the passion. It's helping people. It's whether it's agriculture or something else, it's more about helping people for me and getting the deal done that they hope to accomplish. And so that's where I found that early on. And working with people is a lot of fun. And as you know, you build relationships and you just hear time and time again. I get a lot of feedback from people, our clients, basically saying, Dave Bonnell did a tremendous job for me. And so because of that just renews that energy and excitement as to what we're able to do.
Yeah. That's passion.
So that's passion. And I think when I go to look for hiring somebody, that's a real key element in making that decision. And if somebody doesn't have a passion for agriculture, doesn't have a passion for the services that we do, they'll either weed themselves out in the recruitment process and we'll never hire them. Or, and we have made hiring mistakes, we'll have a very short-term relationship because basically they'll start, their interest will wane for doing that service, doing that work, working for that client.
And you're observing that.
Yeah, we observe it. And the feedback I get pretty quickly is from the client saying, hey, this isn't getting done. This isn't timely. This isn't like the previous manager did it.
You really have a feedback loop with your important clients then.
Exactly. And that when you start to get 2 to 3 iterations, 2 to 3 different clients coming back to me and saying there's a problem, kind of smoke, where there's smoke, there's fire, and that's reality. And that leads to a discussion with that manager. And either things change, which we've had some people change and they've been tremendous rock stars for us, or, you know what, Howard, this just isn't for me, and I need to take my skills to enhance another company. And so if that passion is lacking, that gets ferreted out pretty quickly. The only other problem I've struggled, we find people who have the passion, but sometimes they're a little bit too inwardly focused. And so
yes.
One of the key thing for us is a culture of servant leadership. And I really preach that from the top down. In fact, in my job descriptions for my leaders here in the company, being a servant leader is one of those requirements, because we're in a service business. You have to be willing to serve, be it our staff or our clients. And so that's one of the mantras we really beat the drum on, is this servant leadership. And if you have somebody who has a lot of passion for the agricultural field and the services we do, but they lack that servant leadership component, they basically will struggle at times, because they'll struggle to put the client's needs ahead of their own. And so that becomes a concern, and you find the conflict. Sometimes it becomes a cost-benefit decision, and if the costs outweigh the benefit, then we might make a decision that they need to go work for somebody else. But many times, and you know me, John, maybe I had too much grace in our employment situation, and we work with those people and really try to.
You bend over backwards when you believe in someone, Howard. It's a good thing.
It is. And so we work really hard that if that's a gap for them, how do we bridge that gap? And do we partner somebody with them? Do we create a relationship that can enhance the client relationship for them? So that's where that passion can maybe override too far, but it's a manageable situation. It just takes more time on my part.
Now, in terms of the culture that you've developed, because I've just watched it develop over the years, how do you said I preach out the servant leadership part every chance I get. Some leaders have kind of an organic, I'll just do it in a naturalistic way as we go, walk around management, and some kind of have a structured sort of a program to keep messaging out the healthy aspects of culture. How do you play that one?
So in our company, I said we're decentralized. Give you a vision of what that means. We meet only twice a year as a full staff.
Like physically?
Physically. So I only have my group together twice a year. They would probably chafe if I did 3 times. So you would say, gosh, that's not very many meetings. They're a day and a half long. That's not a lot of time to communicate what we're doing. We have a lot of systems and processes in place. In the real estate business, you have to. Law requires it. You got to do certain disclosures, and you got to do them at certain times. So we have all of that. The key thing, I think, in our culture is building relationships with our clients, and that comes down to communication. So probably the biggest complaint I get from our clients is a lack of communication. They didn't share the bad news with me soon enough. And so we really organically within the company, there's a lot of this feedback with our area representatives out in the field, where I'll get some client feedback saying, hey, John Doe isn't communicating with me the way I kind of want to be communicated with. And so we communicate that with the manager, and it really comes down to how do we improve that? How can we make that happen? And so there's a lot of education that we do that isn't necessarily in a formal classroom setting, but it's going to be more one-on-one with that area representative. And we talk about how can we enhance email? How can we enhance text, phone calls, face-to-face? And it really comes down to the communication piece. It isn't so much about the actual management of the farm. If we do the communication part well, we'll have that farm for multi-generations under management.
Yes, you will. And I think from what you're saying, you pay a lot of attention to what people are saying, kind of like those fine tunings that you want to do in your company by the feedback you get from outside to say, that's a cultural issue. You're not coming, hey, guys, get around here. You're over here. You're not giving the bad news quick enough. And so you're always solving those problems based on the feedback you get, which is a great cultural treatment. Yeah,
and because things change so quickly in today's world, and honestly, one of the fascinating things to me is Purdue University is doing this ag barometer. And it's a touchy-feely thing. So they're calling 400 farmers, and they're saying, well, what do you think about today's ag economy? And they started it a year ago. The barometer goes from 0 to 200.
Okay.
And for the first 10 months, that number hung at 95 to 100. So pretty much average attitudes. All of a sudden, Trump's elected, which was a surprise. And the December report comes out at 132. Commodity prices didn't change, John.
So 15% jump overnight.
Overnight. The January report comes out and it's 153. All of a sudden, you're above the 75th percentile when nothing's changed in terms of their current economic situation. So I bring that up as an example because change happens so quickly. And a lot of my role is that constant feedback with our staff because they're on islands. They're out there in their office, in their own little world. And how do we communicate with them and our clients through them what's happening in the greater agricultural industry or the bigger picture? And they read a lot, but there's a lot of feedback I will provide them like that kind of information. And it's really why? Why is this occurring today? I don't know that I have the answer, but certainly people feel better today than what they did a year ago. And I think a lot of it is optimism based upon things that they think will happen.
Yeah, and that changes things. Now you're an expert in your field. I mean, you're a great broker. You're great at management. You're a subject matter expert, and yet you also have these 21 employees. So how do you divide your time between doing the work of the business and also managing people? Because that's a big issue for leaders.
So my time probably breaks into 15-minute segments throughout the day. Every day, there's going to be a degree of selling that I do. Today, for example, I had 2 different farm families call in and want to talk about selling their properties.
And they wanted to talk to Howard Halderman.
They want to talk to one of the 2 people in the main office. They call the 800 number. It rings in the main office. Our ladies are not really equipped to handle those sales calls when it gets to that level.
Right.
And so very quickly, those calls are going to come to me or Pat Karst. So there's really 2 of us that are going to handle that.
Right.
So I have some of that. I will have some degree of interaction with 2 or 3 of the representatives on a daily basis about this complex problem or that complex problem. So that's that feedback. And we had an issue today where one of the clients on an appraisal wasn't happy with the appraisal report. So we're discussing with that area representative, what do we need to fix? How do we get it resolved for the client? So there's some of that where it's customer service. Then you also have that segment of the day where it's research and learning what's happening in the industry. What are the trends?
Oh, you're always in the R&D part of this.
Exactly. There's reading every day. What's happening in South America. What are other funds doing in the space? There's constant news, and so somebody's got to be that watch, and that's largely my role. So there's a segment of my day dedicated to that. Then there's also going to be what are we looking at that's new. And so you always have these meetings where we're looking at new online bidding software for our auction services, or we're investigating new marketing in the social media space. Last night I did a marketing presentation in Lafayette on land values and rental trends. So those are, the customer service, the sales, the back office things, enhancing the foundational work that we do. As a manager, I get in all of those aspects.
Otherwise, you can't make predictions about future trends and sort of like that if you're not out there doing that.
Right. So, but do I manage any farms? 1. Do I sell any farms? No. My name's not on any brochure. That's the beauty of what we've set up is things may originate here, but very quickly they go out to the field staff or to the staff here in the main office to run with, and they actually do the heavy lifting, John. You know me, I do it for about 15 minutes and then pass it on. So,
well, that's either humility or ADD. I'm not sure there.
I don't know which it is, but that's kind of the way the job has evolved.
Yeah. Well, Howard, this is like huge information. A guy like you who is disciplined and at the same time highly relational and wants to see people thrive, you kind of pulled off in a great way. So, like guys in the Institute, we got men and women here who are almost ready to graduate or just starting to finish their courses, and they're looking out there like the next business they want to build or maybe improving the business they're already in. Some of them are in for-profits, some of them are working for corporations, some family-owned businesses, some multifamily, some 501c3s, some NGOs, some churches. So these people are getting ready to jump out and be Howard when they grow up. What kind of one or two things would you tell them in this developmental phase as they get ready to go, Howard?
So I go back to the two things that I said were our two characteristics here, passion and culture. So with the passion, if you start to do that self-assessment and say, what is my passion? I've worked in my career for some period of time or multiple careers. What do I really love to do? Maybe that opportunity isn't here today or upon graduation, but how can I get there? And start to chart that plan as to how do you get to where that passion leads you. Secondly, then, is the cultural piece. Does this company, does this current place I'm at have the culture I want? If it doesn't, do some research and try to find the company in that space that's your passion that does offer that cultural opportunity for you that you really want to go after. And so I guess those would be the two things I would focus on. Don't be afraid of starting at ground zero. Again, your ultimate goal might be to be the CEO. It might be to be the CFO or lead the IT part. But maybe you can't start there. Don't be afraid to do the heavy lifting, the groundwork, because a lot of times that's where it starts. And by doing that, you get a grassroots feeling for what happens in the industry.
By being engaged.
What those clients want.
By engaging.
Exactly. I think sometimes people come into this, and if they start at a high level, they never really have an understanding of what it takes or what it means to go clean out a grain bin full of corn. And when you have that perspective, I think it's helpful to managing a farm long term.
Guys, you heard the passion part there, and you heard the culture part. And guys, Howard's the kind of guy, not only that he does that in his business, but this is how Howard engages with his family too. He and Carrie have great kids, and he instills passion in them. He wants to make sure that their spiritual life and their academic life and their athletic life are healthy. And he's all about passion and culture, and it's sort of like it pays off, right, Howard?
It has so far, John. And you make a good point. One thing I wanted to bring up with the culture we have here at Halderman, it's one that we have a lot of flexibility. All of my staff, if they need to leave at 4 o'clock to go see a kid's Little League game, they have the right to do that. There is no clock punching. That's not a requirement here. You do not have to be here 8 to 5. The expectation is you have a lot of responsibility to get your job done. I'm not really that nervous about what hours you get your job done within. So that flexibility, I think, is one of the things they really like about our culture. But I've also carried that mantra into our home. And Carrie and I make every effort to be at every kid activity that we can be. Can't make them all, but we're going to make 90+%. And I had a comment from a parent the other day saying, well, you're always doing the book for your son's basketball games. Yeah, I'm going to invest in him because I think I want him to invest in the next generation. And you kind of pass it down that way. And I think if my kids see me investing in them, whether it be spiritually, academically, or athletically, hopefully they'll do that for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And that's going to make the whole society better long term.
Guys, I'm telling you, if you spend more than 5 minutes with Howard Halderman, when you get away from business, the words you'll hear are either family or Purdue. I mean, he just can't stop talking about
one of those two.
Howard Halderman, it was great to be with you. Thanks for your expertise and kind of giving to our institute, and we got to stay in touch.
Thank you very much, John.
All right, buddy. Take care.
We'll see you.
All right.
Bye.